Hey guys, my name is Anthony, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about the mentality behind league racing in F1 Esports and why having a certain type of mindset will make you perform better or worse. So if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to hit the like button, and if you're new to the channel, consider hitting that big red subscribe button below to see more content like this in the future. So for today's video, I'll be talking about what I believe a good mindset is to have before your league races and what I believe a bad mindset is to have before your races, and I'll also be giving you an example of my mindset and how it affected my performances during this season of racing. So getting right into it, what do I believe is a bad mindset before a race? Well, two main phrases I would use to describe a bad mindset before a league race is distractions and lack of confidence. Distractions come in all shapes and sizes. For example, if you're having a bad day prior to your race, you'll be thinking about the stuff that happened to you and your head won't be focused on what is right in front of you. Or if you have other people calling for your attention whilst you're racing, which I have watched tons of league races recently from subscribers where they have constantly had this happen to them, it can really set your mind away from the race and your goals in said race. Another type of distraction, which in my personal opinion is probably one of the worst mindsets to have, is focusing on aspects of the race that are outside of your control. For example, if another driver is too impatient and ends up dive bombing you and you end up spinning out, then that's not really your fault and you shouldn't chop that down as a bad performance on your part. Or if the safety car comes out ruining your race strategy, again, this isn't something that you can control. Sure, it does suck to have that happen to you, but it doesn't mean that you performed badly. Take a look at David Tanitsa in the race at Canada with Jarno Opmeer, the Jarno Opmeer-David Tanitsa situation. He ended up crashing out due to a bug in the game that meant that Jarno Opmeer couldn't actually see David Tanitsa's car, and he ended up spinning out. He ended up crashing out actually, and it was this big spectacular thing, and he was out of the race pretty much, and he had to retire. However, that wasn't something that David Tanitsa or Jarno Opmeer could control. It was just something to do with the actual game itself, and up until that point they had both performed really well. So sure, it sucked on David Tanitsa's part that this ended up happening, but it wasn't something that he could control. So if he focuses on that incident for the next couple of races, he'll end up performing worse than he usually can, and that I can guarantee, because he's thinking about things that he cannot control. Also, if you have a lack of confidence, whether it's a lack of confidence in the track or if it's just a general lack of confidence in a certain skill set like overtaking or defending, you're obviously not going to be performing to your best of abilities because you don't have the confidence to. So in order to have a good mindset, you basically need to think about the opposite of those things. Only focus on things that you have control of. For example, your own consistency during the race and your overall race strategy. Make sure not to set yourself goals that are too high as well, like winning a race when you're usually fighting in the midfield, and have absolute focus on what's going on in front of you right now. Now don't get me wrong, when it comes to winning races, everybody wants to win races, that's why we compete, but the best way to focus on winning on the races, if you're usually battling towards the midfield, is to improve on things that you can control. So if you're like me, for example, where your main weaknesses is overtaking and defending, join 5-lap races and practice your will-to-will skills. Or if your weakness is maybe ERS management, watch races from other drivers who are better than you and see how they're using their ERS during the race, and then practice doing the same. As you start to improve and move up the grid, that's when you can start focusing more on winning the races instead of just battling towards the midfield, which is what you've been doing up until this point. So moving on to some examples of how changing your mindset can improve your overall performances. At the beginning of the season for WOR and TSRL, I had no confidence in my own abilities and I wasn't really in a great situation in real life. So both of those things resulted in me being in a quote-unquote slump. So in my first race, for example, in WOR, I ended up losing concentration and crashing into the back of a car in front of me during a safety car, which ruined my race because there was only a few laps left and I had now had wing damage. And in my first race for TSRL, I had someone overtake me in a really awkward position, which was turn 1, and that caused me to spin out and have to retire. So when it comes to the loss of concentration, it was something that was both outside and inside of my control. Obviously I lost concentration by myself, which was in my control, but at the same time the reason I lost concentration was because I was more focused on things outside of what I really needed to be focused on, which was my stream and my live chat in the stream. So in order to combat that, I started turning off my second monitor whilst racing so that I couldn't see the live chat on my screen, which allowed me to focus on what was right in front of me, which was my race. And now that I'm better at putting all of my focus onto the race, I've now started turning on my monitor again so that during situations like safety cars, I can quickly look over at my screen and ask people what they think I should do. And when it comes to the guy overtaking me, that wasn't really something that I could control, so I got over it and moved on to things that I could control. And by doing some of those things and changing my mindset, I started to improve in places that I was weak at, and I also started to improve my results. So instead of hoping for something like a safety car not coming out during the race, I turned my focus to my will-to-will abilities and improving the way that I use my ERS, which allowed me to be more confident when overtaking cars, which is exactly what I needed in order to start getting better results. Even at my most recent race at Paul Ricard, I didn't have the confidence to perform in quali, so I focused more on my race pace and my overtaking abilities, which allowed me to go from P11 to, well, I'm not going to tell you that here because that's going to be my next video. So if you ever find yourself not in the best mindset, just know that you're not always going to be in the best mindset. I'm not always in the best mindset, and sometimes I let my anger get the best of me and I do things like retire mid-race when I could have easily scored points. For example, I got my very first pole at TSRL round 8, I believe, at Baku, and I ended up getting taken out at turn 1, and it just caused me to get so angry that I ended up retiring, and the guy who ended up taking me out ended up winning the race anyway. So that meant that I definitely had the pace to win the race had I just continued and had a calm mindset. But when you do stuff like that, you can learn from it and move on, and then when you're in that situation again, you can choose more wisely based on what you did before. And I had a conversation with one of my subscribers recently, Oscar, and he wasn't really feeling all that great because he wasn't getting the results that he wanted in his league. And after speaking to him, I made him realize exactly what I'm making you guys realize right now. He's not focusing on the things that he can control, he's focusing on the things that he can't control, like safety cars and other drivers taking him out. What he needs to focus on are things that he can control, like practicing driving in the dirty air behind another car, because that was one of the situations where he could control what happened and he ended up spinning out because he wasn't used to driving in the dirty air. So what he needs to focus on is learning how to drive behind other cars and learning how to make the overtakes happen from those situations. So to conclude this video, when it comes to the mentality of league racing and F1 esports, you need to be focused on how you can improve and not on the things that are outside of your control. Always be 110% focused on the race. Don't set your goals too high or else it will bring you back down when you don't get those results, and instead focus on improving your weaknesses and then change your goals once you start seeing results from the training that you've been doing. So I hope that you learned from this video, and if you did, please consider hitting the like button and sticking around by subscribing to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you guys in my next video.